Every fall, I watch beekeepers do the same thing. They drive to the supply store and they load up on syrup mix, pollen substitute, protein patties, feeding stimulants, and half a dozen little bottles of things with names that sound like they belong in a pharmacy. Then they go home and they pour all of it into hives that didn't need most of it. And come November, they're poorer, and their bees are no better off than the fellow down the road who spent almost nothing at all. I've been at this a long time, more than 40 years on the same patch of ground, watching seasons come and go. And if there's one thing I wish somebody had sat me down and told me when I was young and eager and had more money than sense, it's this. Your bees don't need most of what they're trying to sell you. What they need is far simpler, far cheaper, and it's mostly already sitting right there in the hive or growing in the ground around it. So before you spend another dollar this fall, I want you to stay with me, because I'm going to show you exactly what your colony actually needs to make it to spring, how to read what your hive is telling you so you feed only when you must, and how to lean on the natural resources already in and around your apiary instead of the checkout counter. And I'll be honest with you about what's worth your money and what's a waste of it. Here's why this matters, and why I don't take it lightly. Somewhere around 80% of folks who take up beekeeping quit within a few years. And a big part of what breaks them is the money. They watch the costs pile up, the boxes, the tools, the treatments, and then this endless river of feed every spring and fall. And they look at their 2 hives and think, this doesn't add up. Meanwhile, half the feeding they're doing is either unnecessary or actively working against the bees. So you're paying to hurt your own colonies. That's a bitter pill. Let's make sure it isn't you. Now, to understand what your bees need, you have to understand what winter actually is for a honeybee colony. And it is not what most people think. A winter cluster is not a hive full of bees huddling to keep from freezing. It's a living furnace. When the temperature drops, the bees pull into a tight ball around the queen and the brood, and the bees on the inside vibrate their wing muscles, the same muscles they'd use to fly, without moving their wings. That shivering generates heat. The cluster keeps its core somewhere around 95 degrees when there's brood, and the outer layer of bees forms an insulating shell, like the bark on a tree. The bees rotate from the cold outside to the warm inside, so nobody freezes to death on the edge. And here's the thing that furnace runs on: not electricity, not your good intentions, honey, carbohydrate. The bees eat honey, they burn it as fuel, and that's what keeps the core warm through a January cold snap. A strong colony in a cold climate will burn through something on the order of 50 to 90 pounds of honey over a winter, depending on where you live and how long and hard that winter runs. That number is the whole ball game. That is what you are actually trying to provide when you feed in the fall. Not vitamins, not stimulants, fuel. So the very first thing you do before you buy anything, before you mix a single drop of syrup, is you find out how much fuel your bees already have. And this is where most people go wrong. They assume the tank is empty and they start pouring. You wouldn't fill a gas tank without looking at the gauge. Don't feed a hive without reading it first. There are 2 ways to read that gauge, and you should use both. The first is the hefting method, and it's older than any of us. On a cool day, you go to the back of the hive, you get a good grip on the bottom board, and you lift, just an inch or 2, just enough to feel the weight. A hive that's heavy with honey feels like it's bolted to the ground. A hive that lifts easy, that comes up light like an empty box, is a hive in trouble. Now you have to calibrate your own arms. Early on, heft a frame you know is full of capped honey. That's about 8 pounds on a deep frame, and heft an empty one, and let your body learn the difference. After a season or 2, you'll be able to walk your yard and know which colonies are set for winter and which ones aren't, just by lifting the back an inch. That skill is free, and it's worth more than any gadget. The second way is to actually look. On a warm afternoon in early fall, when the bees are still flying, you want to see frames of capped honey, that pale, waxed-over honey, flanking the cluster and arched over the top of the brood nest. In most of the country, you're looking for the equivalent of a deep box, or a deep and a shallow, mostly full of stores going into winter. If you crack that hive and the upper box is heavy and capped from corner to corner, congratulations. You may not need to feed at all. Put your wallet away. That colony did the work itself all summer long, and your job now is mostly to leave it be. That right there is the first way to stop wasting money. A colony that packed away its own honey does not need you buying it sugar, and this is the part that ought to change how you think about the whole season. The very best, cheapest, most complete fall feed on Earth is the colony's own honey, made from the flowers around your yard. It is perfectly balanced for them. It has the trace nutrients, the enzymes, and the acidity they evolved on. No syrup you mix will ever match it. Which brings me to something I want you to really hear, because it's the single biggest change you can make. The way you stop wasting money on fall feed is you stop robbing the pantry in the first place. Every fall, I meet beekeepers who pull every frame of honey off their hives, take the whole crop, every last capped comb, and then turn right around and buy sugar to feed the bees back through winter. Think about that for a second. They took the free, perfect food the bees made, sold it, or jarred it, and then paid money to replace it with something worse. That's like harvesting your whole garden and then buying canned vegetables to eat all winter. If you simply leave the bees enough of their own honey, leave that top box on, you have solved your fall feeding problem for free. You harvest the surplus, the honey above what they need, and you let them keep the rest. That's not losing a crop. That's the smartest money you never spent. Now, sometimes the reading tells you the tank really is low. Maybe it was a poor nectar year. Maybe you're working a new package or a late swarm that didn't have time to build up. Maybe a dearth hit hard and they ate into their reserves. When the heft is light and the frames are thin, then yes, you feed. But you feed correctly, and you feed the right thing at the right time, and you don't waste a dime on the rest. For fall feeding, when the goal is to fill the pantry for winter, you want heavy syrup. 2 parts sugar to 1 part water by weight. Plain white granulated cane sugar and water. That's it. The reason it's thick, 2 to 1 instead of the thin 1 to 1 you might use in spring, is that the bees have to evaporate the water out before they can cap it. And in fall, there isn't much warm weather left to do that work. Give them thick syrup and they have far less water to drive off. Thin syrup fed too late in the year can actually sit there, not get cured, and you've wasted your sugar and your effort. Now let me save you some money and some grief on the things you don't need. You do not need to buy fancy pre-mixed liquid feed at a premium when plain cane sugar and water does the identical job for a fraction of the cost. You do not need feeding stimulants and additives with essential oils and vitamin packs promising to boost your bees. The research on most of those is thin to non-existent, and I'm not going to stand here and oversell you something I can't back up. A strong colony with enough honey does not need a supplement. And whatever you do, do not feed your bees the brown sugar, the raw sugar, the molasses, or the leftover holiday candy. Those contain solids and compounds that bees cannot properly digest in winter, and they can lead to dysentery in a cluster that can't get out to relieve itself. Plain white sugar, that's the whole shopping list. Now here's the other side of the ledger, protein, because carbohydrate, the honey and syrup, is the winter fuel. But bees also need protein, and they get that from pollen. Protein is what raises brood. It's what builds the fat bodies in those long-lived winter bees that have to survive for months instead of weeks. And in the fall, the colony is raising the very bees that will carry them through to spring, the winter bees. If they're short on pollen in late summer and early fall, those winter bees come out underfed with weak fat bodies, and they don't live long enough to see the crocuses bloom. And that colony dwindles and dies in February with honey still in the box. It didn't starve for fuel, it ran out of healthy bees. So this is where folks reach for the protein patties and the pollen substitute and spend a good bit of money doing it. And sometimes that's warranted, but before you do, go look at your frames. Because a healthy colony in a decent area is very often storing its own pollen, and it's beautiful when you learn to see it. Those cells packed with pollen of every color, bright orange, deep yellow, dusty blue, brick red, that's called bee bread. The bees pack pollen into cells, add a little nectar and enzymes, and it ferments slightly and stores. That is the colony's own protein pantry, and it is superior to anything in a bag. If you open your hive in the fall and you see arcs of stored bee bread around the brood nest, that colony has told you plainly, I've got my protein handled. You don't need to buy a substitute for a colony that's already stocked its own, And this is the heart of what I want you to take away today. So much of what beekeepers pay for every fall, the bees are perfectly capable of providing themselves. If you let them, and if you set up your yard to help them, you can lean on the natural resources of your own apiary far more than the supply catalog wants you to believe. Let me be concrete about that, because this is where you really save money year after year. The single best thing you can do to cut your feed bill for good is to plant and protect fall forage around your bees. In much of the country, the big fall bloom is goldenrod and aster, that late flush of yellow and purple along the roadsides and field edges in September and October. A good goldenrod flow can fill a super with winter stores in a couple of weeks, all on its own, no cost to you. And I'll tell you, when that goldenrod's coming in strong, the whole yard smells like old gym socks. That funky smell is the sign your bees are packing away free winter fuel. So instead of mowing down every wildflower and buying sugar to replace what you cut, you let those late bloomers stand. You plant what does well in your region. You have a word with a neighbor about that back corner. You're not just feeding bees, you're building a landscape that feeds them every year for free. And it goes further than that inside the hive itself. When you do your fall inspections and you find a strong colony overflowing with honey and a weaker one that's light, you don't have to run out and buy syrup for the light one. You can take a frame or two of capped honey from the rich hive and give it to the poor one. That's called equalizing, and it's one of the oldest tricks there is. The bees made that honey. It's already perfect. You're just moving the wealth from the colony that has plenty to the one that's short. Free feed, better than anything in a jug, and you already own it. Just be sure both colonies are healthy first. You never want to move frames out of a colony you suspect has disease because you'll spread it. But between two sound hives, moving a honey frame is the cheapest, best feeding you'll ever do. Same goes for a frame of that stored bee bread. A strong colony with pollen to spare can carry a weaker neighbor through. If you want the free Dead Out autopsy card, the 7 things a dead hive tells you in 10 minutes, it's on the site linked below. No charge. Because knowing exactly why a colony died, whether it was starvation up top or a cluster too small to keep warm or mites that hollowed it out in the fall, is what tells you what to do differently next year. And most of the time, once folks read that card, they realize the fix wasn't more feed at all. Now let me be straight with you about the mistakes, because I've made most of them myself and I'd rather you didn't. The first mistake is feeding too late. Syrup feeding in the fall is a race against temperature. Once the weather turns cold, down into the 40s and below, the bees can't take syrup down and cure it properly, and they can't move around to store it. If you wait until November in a cold climate to notice a hive is light, you've likely waited too long for syrup to help. Read your hives in early fall, late August into September in the north, so you have time to act while it's still warm enough for the bees to use what you give them. The second mistake, and it's the one that quietly kills more colonies than starvation ever does, is treating a light hive as a feeding problem when it's really a mite problem. Here's the connection nobody made for me early on: Varroa mites, which have been with us in this country since 1987 and aren't going anywhere, feed on the bees and on the developing brood, and they transmit viruses that cripple the winter bees. A colony crashing with a heavy mite load in the fall will look, to an inexperienced eye, like it's just weak and needs feeding, so the beekeeper feeds it. And it dies anyway, because sugar was never the problem. If your fall bees are dwindling, you check your mite levels first, a proper alcohol wash or sugar roll, before you assume it's a feeding issue. All the syrup in the world won't outrun a mite explosion. The third mistake is feeding when you don't need to and drowning the brood nest in syrup. If you dump feed into a colony that already has plenty, the bees can backfill the brood nest with syrup, leaving the queen nowhere to lay. In the fall, that matters less than in spring, but it's still waste and it still causes trouble. Feed the hungry hive. Leave the fat one alone. Reading first, always. The fourth mistake is going too thin, too late, or using the wrong sugar, and I've already walked you through that. 2 parts sugar to 1 part water, plain white cane sugar, while it's still warm enough for them to cure it. Now, there's one more feeding method I want to give you, because it's your safety net for the dead of winter. And it costs almost nothing. If you get to January or February and you heft a hive and it's frighteningly light, you cannot feed liquid syrup in the cold. It'll chill the cluster and they can't take it. What you do instead is dry sugar, laid right on top. The simplest version is the mountain camp method. You lay a sheet of newspaper over the top bars. You pour plain granulated sugar right on it in a mound. Mist it very lightly so it crusts, and you close up. The bees will eat it as emergency fuel, and the sugar also absorbs excess moisture up top, which is a bonus because in winter, wet is a bigger killer than cold. That's your insurance policy. Plain sugar, a sheet of newspaper, and it might just carry a light colony over the hump until the spring flow. But understand, that's emergency feeding. It's not a plan. The plan is to have them heavy in October so you never need it. Let me pull this together for you because it's simpler than the catalog wants you to believe. Your bees need two things going into winter: fuel, which is honey, carbohydrate to burn in that living furnace, and healthy, well-fed winter bees, which means enough pollen in late summer to build their fat bodies. That's it. Everything else you get sold is, for most colonies most years, unnecessary. So you read your hives first, heft them, look at them, and you feed only the ones that are actually short. You leave the bees enough of their own honey instead of stripping it and buying it back. You move frames of honey and bee bread from your rich colonies to your poor ones. You let the goldenrod and aster stand, and you plant for the fall flow so the landscape feeds them for free year after year. When you truly must feed, it's plain white sugar. Heavy syrup in the fall while it's warm, dry sugar on newspaper only as a winter emergency. And you check your mites before you ever blame a weak colony on hunger. Do all that, and your fall feed bill nearly disappears, and your bees go into winter stronger than the ones drowning in supplements next door. Everything I just walked you through, the reading, the thresholds, the timing, is one chapter of the Winter Almanac, the dated, zoned plan that gets your hives to spring, with the current 2026 mite thresholds and every number sourced. Link and QR on screen. The bees have been getting themselves through winter for millions of years without a single trip to the supply store. Your job isn't to replace what they do. It's to read them honestly, help them where they're truly short, and get out of their way the rest of the time. Do that, and you'll spend less, lose fewer colonies, and enjoy this craft a whole lot longer. That's what keeps folks in it. So, take a walk out to your hives this week. Put your hands on the back of each one and just feel the weight. Your bees will tell you everything you need to know. Subscribe and stick around. I've got plenty more to show you before the season turns. Take care of yourself and take care of those bees.